Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of the Blacklist Season 9, Episode 7, titled Between Sleep and Awake. And just for the record, when I heard that title, I was excited because that's a really good title. It just like hits you right there.
Yeah, especially because we knew that this was going to be about Ressler, him dealing with his grief. And that is really what grief feels like. It does feel like you're kind of in this state between sleep and awake, and you don't really feel anything. You're kind of you feel nothing, you feel everything. You're just kind of in this fog.
I think a good just starting off place here is that I think we're all well aware that Wrestler is a polarizing character, and I feel like,
But Diego is such a good actor. Like,
yeah,
he really is. I mean, I know that this show doesn't always do him well to give him really good material, but when they do,
yeah.
oh my God. Okay, we're going to get into all of that. This was a really good episode for him.
It was a great showcase for him, and I understand there's a lot of people out there who watch the show for Reddington and all of that, and I get it. James Spader is great, but I think Diego did a great job with the material. There's a couple of things I'm going to nitpick when it comes to the story itself, but before we go any further, hit that subscribe button because, every week, and we've got more Blacklist episodes coming this
Mhm.
month, we're going to be here discussing everything that goes on, sharing some theories. We love hearing from you guys, so hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of that.
Also, follow us over on Instagram, Matt and Jess TV. We have a bunch of pictures up from over the holidays, so check that out as well.
Okay, can we just pick up on what you were saying about
Oh,
Diego's performance in that
okay.
last scene?
Yeah, listen, I didn't love everything about the episode. There was some stuff like from the past that I was kind of like, but I really like going into this season. I wanted to see fallout from what happened
Yes.
with Liz. That was when I heard about the 2 year time jump. I was like, oh no, that's not what I want. I really want to see those feelings and how people dealt with it. And we got that with Wrestler in this episode. I'm going to jump to the end of this episode. We
Yeah.
will get to some of the other stuff, but his performance at that graveside was so good. The writing was really, really good. His performance was good. He really got me. Like, I felt for him.
I think one of the challenges with Wrestler as a character sometimes is that because he can be a little bit all over the place, or we get like
Mhm.
these long stretches where we don't really get a spotlight on him, it's hard to sometimes know where he lands. But when he's sort of talking about, wanting to be between sleep and awake so that he can picture Liz there and that they can go on these adventures together, just like that monologue was so well done. And I think so unfortunately relatable to a lot of people who have experienced grief and they would do anything to have that moment. And we talked a little bit about this in the preview for this episode as well, this idea of Wrestler loses Liz like right at a time when there's some sort of clarity when it comes to the feelings that they have for each other. And it feels like he was so close to having, this relationship that on some level, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, he wanted. And then it's taken away. And it's like the absence of that possibility, I think, is so heartbreaking for him. And I think that's one of the reasons he's struggling so hard to move on.
Yeah, that's why also seeing him go and get her favorite flowers and
Yeah.
really feeling nervous about going to sit down and, have this conversation with Liz and Liz's grave. It was really good because you're right. We don't always get that much insight, and he can be a closed off character where he doesn't
Yeah.
always reveal a lot about him. It's not always that easy to get to know him. That's why him just sitting up against a grave and being like, so this is what's been going on since you've been
Yeah.
gone. Reddington shaved his head. He's got a shaman as a lover. He's still infuriated. Having just this talk with her, and even having a back and forth where he's like, oh, well, you know what I mean. Of course you know what I mean, kind of thing. It's just, I loved every second of it.
Yeah.
That whole scene at the graveyard was a 10 out of 10.
I will say this. I kind of miss the beard already. Already I missed the beard. I liked bearded Ressler. I thought it was a good look for him. He looked very much like he'd been living out in the woods.
No, it was good to see him shave it off. Listen,
Nah.
I'm not here for the beard, but it was good to sort of see him sort of shed that off, clean himself up, get the flowers, come to the grave, have a really heartfelt conversation, even have a conversation with Tom.
Yep.
She is buried next to Tom, which I
Yeah.
am sure is going to be a topic for the Blacklist community.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a very civil discussion going on right now on Blacklist Twitter about all of this, just like there was,
Try to keep it civil here, guys. Try.
just like there was a civil conversation about Reddington barely being in this episode. But anyway, yeah, I think the present stuff was good, and also I think pretty important for Ressler, showing and signaling that he wants to try to move forward and evolve to a certain extent. That doesn't mean that like all of the, ails of the past 2 years are going to go away in a blink of an eye, but there's an intention there.
Also, they made it very clear in this episode because there's been a lot of talk in the comments, talk on Twitter about Harold being Agnes's guardian, and that if Harold wasn't there, if Reddington would end up getting Agnes, which, we've said that's not the way that it was going to work out. It would probably go to Charlene, but it was made clear in this episode that she is also named as guardian.
So that's pretty clearly going to make it that, okay, if Reddington's ever going to get custody, something has to happen to the both of them.
Yeah, and I mean, Reddington hasn't said that that's what he's after. I think he just really wants to have a relationship with Agnes, and he does, and he's growing one.
Yeah, I think that's what matters to him more than anything else. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got all of that in the present, and we'll see where this evolution goes. But in the past, we have a very interesting, I guess, journey for Ressler. And I say I guess because, okay, everything just big picture with Lauren, who was like running the hotel, and her kid Theo. I can't place it, and I'm sure we've all had this sort of TV deja vu before where we feel like we've watched the same exact story on another show, and I don't think it's necessarily the case, but I felt like I have seen something very, very similar to everything that happened with Lauren and Theo on another show, and it is driving me crazy because I can't picture what it was.
No, we have, and I'm having a hard time putting my finger on it too, but we've seen it recently. It's been within the past year, something that we've seen. I was thinking about the exact same thing before coming in here.
Yeah, and it's not like I necessarily think that stuff was horrible. It's just it wasn't as good as the stuff in the present, but I think because it's like driving me nuts.
Animal Kingdom.
Oh!
Okay, so we were watching Animal Kingdom this summer, and one of the characters, Pope, went on sort of I'm leaving the family, I need to be alone, and everything that's going on. He ended up in this cult where there was like a woman and her kid and everything he was doing to save her and all this sort of stuff from the evil man and all of that. It was the same story.
I am very grateful you bring this up because I was going to be between sleep and awake for the rest of the night trying to figure out what the bleep this was, but that's totally it.
I was really glad that we started this episode out by actually seeing sort of Ressler seeing everything that's sort of going on, because that was what I really wanted. We saw this sort of unbelievable moment at the end of season 8 where he like pulled all his wires off and running down the street and all of that. But we end up actually seeing him get into this car. He steals someone's car and commandeers it and starts chasing after Reddington, and then ends up having this huge accident where he hits another woman, and his blame for Reddington just runs deep. It is his fault that Liz is dead.
This whole sequence is exactly why I'm so unbelievably frustrated with Ressler sometimes, because it's like, we all knew you were going to be like, revenge, like the moment this happened at the end of last season. That was predictable. I did kind of appreciate, though, that there were legitimate consequences for Ressler just like taking this woman's car and going on the run with it, because I feel like we see that on like 24 shows and like nothing ever comes of it as a result.
Yeah, it's true.
So, yeah, eventually Ressler finds himself in the hospital as a result of his injuries.
Okay, and now we're going to get into the part of the episode where I was just like, huh? And
Yeah.
that is the doctor who is pushing medicine on him and pushing this, drug that he's addicted to or had been addicted to in the past and pushing it really hard on him. Where Russell's like, no, I'm good. No,
Yeah.
no, no, you need to have this. No, I'm good. I've had a problem in the past. Oh, I know. I've read your file. Take this drug because if you don't, you're going to be on the street looking for what. It's just like, who are you? Like, what is this doctor?
Yeah.
Has anyone out there had this experience? You don't need to tell me, like, who it is or whatever, but
Yeah.
like, I have never gone to a doctor where I've been like, and they would say, hey, do you want, this for your pain? And I said no. And they were like, you need to take this or you will turn to the streets.
It was so weird, like
Dude,
so
no.
unbelievably
No.
weird. Like the closest thing I could think of, and this is not even close, is that when I broke my clavicle on Beauty and the Geek and they took me to the hospital, the doctor like prescribed one of these heavy duty drugs or whatever, but then like production actually had the medication and I sort of had to ask for it so they could maintain my safety. And they sort of did ask, is there somebody who can kind of help you watch out for some of this stuff? But even this whole sequence, there were a lot of people online I saw really kind of wondering if this doctor was like some sort of shady setup character, and I kind of agree, but at the same time I don't think that's the case. I think the doctor just kind of sucked.
Yeah, he sucked. And I mean, we probably won't see him again. I mean, most of these characters that we've come into contact with tonight, I do not think that we are going to see them again.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in this episode in this weird, like, podunk town called Liberty Falls, where we saw, him getting into this fight when he was sort of set up in order to get some more product.
Yep.
We saw him, like, waking up passed out outside a hotel, and it's just like, like we said earlier, there's a couple of things that I think were reasonably interesting, but what makes any of this matter? Like, why does it matter now?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, he did have that conversation with Liz at the grave where he kind of said, I just thought that there was nothing really good left and that, no good people left kind of thing. But his interaction with these two people in the town, he was kind of like, you know what? I've realized that's not the case. There are good people out there and, things can move forward. And, it didn't really sound like he was kind of like, maybe I'll see them again, because I don't think that's really going to be it. I know that, she asked maybe we will see him again, but like, I just can't see how that works.
Yeah, I don't understand how it would come about because he would probably have to go back there. It doesn't seem like Theo or Lauren really knew that much about him. They didn't know until the very end that he was a former FBI agent, and that's seemingly all they know about him now.
Yeah, I mean, that story was okay. Like we said, we've seen this story already play out within the last year on another show, and it was not that great on the other show either, if I'm being completely honest. It was a story that I was kind of like, man, I'm wasting a lot of time on a character that I am not going to see again, that isn't really pushing forward the story of the main character, Pope in that case, and Ressler in this case, because we all know that he ended up coming back to work, with Cooper and the task force and everyone, didn't have to do with Lauren or Theo at all.
That's what made it kind of hard to just like dive really into this or really care that much about some of these characters, was just because I was sort of sitting here thinking, okay, we already know how this story ends. And like from the moment that this kid is like, oh, you're my friend Ressler, and he's like, no, I'm not your friend. I was like, okay, eventually this kid's gonna be Ressler's friend. He's gonna bond with him. Like all of this sort of stuff you could see just telegraphed from start to finish. And those were the moments where I was kind of hoping, okay, could we just cut down like 5 minutes on that and give us like 5 more minutes of maybe the present, whether it is Ressler at the grave, whether it is Ressler, interacting with some other characters. Like it would have been nice to see how some of them were handling the anniversary of Liz's death.
I agree 100%. I was about to say the same thing. I wanted to see him go in and see some of that, because having Cooper come to Ressler and being like, Agnes has this for you, and it's like, oh, it's this picture of the two of them together and it's very meaningful, and that's the sort of catalyst that gets him like, oh, I'm gonna shave, clean up, get some flowers, it's time to go and talk to Liz, and it's time to then come to this celebration of life, which very mature for a kid of Agnes's age to be like, I want to celebrate her life.
I feel like Agnes's internal age at this point has got to be like 37 or something, with everything this kid has gone through since the very, very start.
No, I really would have liked to have seen that, because we all didn't get to see a funeral or a goodbye of that type, any sort of celebration of her life. It was just, she's dying in the street 2 years later. So for those of us who did like Liz, and I understand that not everyone did, I did. I found her to be a very important part of the story. Her connection with Reddington, her connection with Ressler, with the team. I wanted to see something that was kind of like a memorial, a celebration of her life, a funeral, something for me as an audience member to also say goodbye.
Yeah, that would have been really, really nice. And the last major thing here that I want to talk about is timing, because timing means a lot when it comes to shows like this. And we are like zooming ourselves into the future now and reading some of the comments. And I know one of the comments is going to be, you guys gave us this huge cliffhanger with Dembe and Reddington, and we got zero advancement or resolution here at all. Was the timing for this episode bad?
Yes, it was. And we mentioned this a bit in the preview, the comparison to The Walking Dead. There was something very similar there where, spoilers for people who haven't watched. Okay, if you're still listening. So there was an episode where Glenn, one of the main characters, he was up on this like crate, and there was, walkers all around him, and he got pulled down, and it was like, he was dead. He had to have been dead. Like, I was like tuning in the next week being like, I need to know. And they did something almost exactly like this, where it was just a one character story, and it was really good, like really good. But I was like, what? Come on, guys. You can't leave us from this to this. Like, this episode also needed to happen, but maybe after you let us know.
Yeah, I think that's why I feel like this episode's going to get like a little bit of undue hate, just because of where they put it in terms of the order.
No, I agree. I can see that people are going to be really frustrated about it. And I understand. I want some answers too from the last episode. But if I'm just looking at this episode sort of in a bottle, it's its own episode.
Yeah.
Yes, there were some problems with it, but there was also some very powerful moments in this episode, and it was an episode that needed to happen. I personally needed to know, how did Ressler feel about this? How did he deal with this? Like, there was such a huge connection there. There was love there was friendship there, they were co-workers, there were so many different levels to that Ressler-Liz relationship. It needed this episode.
And I think if you isolate even just those final few minutes, I think that's going to be one of the most memorable Ressler moments on the entire show. So I will absolutely give him that. For everyone out there who loves Reddington, here's some good news. He and Dembe have a big role to play in the next upcoming episode. It seems as though there's a very big Dembe episode coming somewhere along the line after that. So let's be excited for that. But of course, thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button, and we will see you here next time.